And then we're going to go on to this topic. Number 8. Women priestesses or deaconesses today should not be considered an innovation. We should, notwithstanding 2,000 years of holy tradition and practice, entertain the idea that there could be women priestesses and women diaconesses, again, introduced into the church, rather, in our day and age. Is that something the fathers of the church have taught? Do we have saints who've encouraged this path? Do we have any saints in our day who've said, yes, let's consider something that's never been done for 2,000 years, and let's put aside the holy tradition and let's respond to the various movements of our day, the spirit of the age, etc., which wants to change the roles of men and women. The claim is that there's nothing here saying that the clergy has to remain male, right? There's nothing in the holy tradition, they claim, that says that the clergy should be a male clergy, but rather there's a tremendous range for growth and opportunity for women today in the world and in the church. The push for women priestesses or deaconesses is not some innovative approach that violates the fundamentals of the faith, it's claimed. On the contrary, it is a narrow-minded fundamentalism that opposes innovation and progress and restricts people, men and women, into outdated roles for men and women, right? So if we insist in the Orthodox Church on the holy tradition, the practice we've had, and we say, no, we're not going to follow the world, we're not going to follow the trends, we're not going to follow the ideas today, we're going to remain, hated by the various movements of our day, feminism or secularism, or whatever it might be, we are going to be called fundamentalists. We're going to be seen as opposing innovation and progress and stuck on archaic, outdated ideas of men and women. So that is the claim. And we're not going to spend too much time on this, but it should be fairly obvious that there is no basis in Holy Tradition or the saints for such an innovation, for such a change. I'm going to read to you from a study that has appeared recently that I recommend to all of you, The Disappearing Deaconess, How the Hierarchical Ordering of Church Offices Doomed the Female Diaconate. And this is a very timely and important study that anyone who has interest in this and is worried about this or interested in learning why the church allowed the once upon a time female diaconate in the first 500, 600, 700 years of the church, there existed very limited in certain parts of the church, a female diaconate. What did it do? How did it work? That'll have to remain for you to read more about in this wonderful book, to buy the book, Disappearing Deaconesses by Father Brian Patrick Mitchell, who is a deacon in Washington, D.C. at the Rocor Cathedral. And he has done the work, and you can benefit from it. So I recommend to go and buy the book and share it and learn, because it's important for all of us to know what is the tradition of the church. So he says, the history of deaconesses exists in the legacy of the church, but history is not tradition. The order of deaconesses was limited primarily to the Eastern Empire within Constantinople, where they had a specific purpose, and which the purpose for their original creation is not applicable to the church today. The church has a tradition of not having deaconesses rather than having them. Modernist advocates for the restoration of this order lack the understanding of what their historical purpose was and what their function was, how long they existed and where they existed, and exactly why the church phased out the existence of the order. So at the heart of the problem here is a misunderstanding, a lack of understanding of the role of Holy Tradition, who guides the church throughout its history to whatever comes next and how it develops in whatever way it develops, that this is the hand of God, the Spirit of God, and that Holy Tradition is not something that you go and you undo and question and overturn. and that it's not an accident that the female diaconate fell out. There's no accidents on this level in the church. So there's a fundamental approach to holy tradition which is problematic. And you see it also in the idea, for instance, among some, well, that we've become liturgically too focused, for instance, on lives of saints, services to saints. We should scale that back. We should just get rid of a lot of that. That's a accruement. That's something that came over time, which is obscured the purity and simplicity of the ancient church. You hear this kind of thing in discussions, but it's a fundamental error because those are enrichments to the church. They're given by God, inspired by God, and they bring us and they initiate us and bring us closer to God. They're not something that is an obstacle to going deeper. In a similar light, we approach this question and the development of the church in this way with trust into the holy tradition. We don't go back and and throw out what the holy tradition has given us over the last 1,300 years. Now, along with this, we have to put it in the right context. That's why I included priestesses and deaconesses as a question, and that because it is absolutely connected. And the advocates of deaconesses some will say, no, it has nothing to do with priestesses, but the context, the inspiration, the spirit is certainly coming from those academics and those places in the West that have already been through this process and accepted priestesses, for instance, in the Anglican Communion, and they're pushing for the same thing even in Catholicism. So it would be proper to understand that there's a context to this temptation and this innovation, and it's not just going to remain with the introduction of deaconesses or the introduction of lower clergy, but it will eventually, there already is a discussion. There already are some academics who want to see openly women priestesses, but it will develop in that direction. That's been shown to happen already in the heterodox confessions. It would be naive and prideful on our part to say, no, we won't have that temptation. That won't happen. Everyone in the Orthodox Church understands the boundaries. There's no guarantee that the Orthodox, if they do not live the narrow path and follow the saints, will not innovate in the West or any other place around the world. So this quote is from a public statement on Orthodox Deaconesses by concerned clergy and laity, which was produced a couple of years ago. I happen to be one of the signers and worked with a small group of clergy to produce this document. You can find it on orthodoxethos.com. And it says in there many things, but one of the things it says, and I think this is relevant, there are advocates of deaconesses who wish to see women treated the same as men in the church as in the world. And this is an important point because they don't understand the otherworldliness and the uniqueness of the church's tradition in many ways. They want the cultural changes they're seeing around them outside the church to be visited on without much distinction or discernment in the church, and the church's culture to be essentially merged. In the same spirit that we saw earlier with let's get rid of cassocks and put on Western clergy clothing, it's in a similar way that they're coming and approaching that which is around them in the West, and they want to see also in the Orthodox Church. So it says, they wish to see women treated the same as men in the church as in the world, and who therefore use the right of ordination, hierotonia, of deaconesses in a handful of Byzantine service books to argue that deaconesses were once major clergy. This is a big discussion about what exactly was going on, how were deaconesses understood. I can't get into that tonight. That might be a podcast for the future. These advocates covet the rank, honor, and authority of the clergy. Some would have deaconesses just be like deacons, only female. That was not the case in the ancient church. They would end up the natural and economical order of male and female to raise, they would upend, I should say, the natural and economical order of male and female to raise women over men in the hierarchy of the church. They would ordain, quote unquote, women who are young, married, and with children, and they would give them a vocal role in worship and all the authority a deacon might exercise over men as well as women. These are stated and positions of certain people who are advocating for deaconesses in the Orthodox Church. So that's the proper context, and that's why it's not something inspired by the saints. We don't hear contemporary saints talking about this. You don't even hear really many people at all in the Orthodox Church talking about this outside of certain Western academic circles. So another innovation that one has to be on guard for, not because the church is just going to be insensitive and indifferent to women or their place, but because this is something that's inconsistent with what the church has lived for 2,000 years, including the saints, including the women saints of the church. If I would just end with this, if you can find 10 abbesses, 20 abbesses, 30 abbesses, whatever, I don't know, whatever number it would be reasonable, in the Orthodox Church, in the different parts of the Orthodox Church, Romania, Greece, Russia, Serbia, that would be, advocates and zealots for the reintroduction of deaconesses or priestesses, then, maybe I'll sit down and I'll think about it. Until then, the leaders of the Orthodox Church are, in terms of women leadership, are the abbesses of the various monasteries. And I don't know any who want to see an introduction of deaconesses in the Orthodox Church. That's significant.